Good evening, Western Standard viewers, and welcome to Hannaford, a weekly politics show of the Western Standard. It is Thursday, January the 22nd. With me today is our old friend Yaroslav Baran. In a past life, he was communications director to Prime Minister Stephen Harper. These days, as co-founder of Pendulum Group, he's a political consultant in Ottawa. Welcome to the show, Yaroslav.
Oh, it's good to be here, Nigel. Thanks.
Oh, good. Yaroslav, in just a week, Conservatives from all across Canada will be gathering in Calgary for the party's leadership review. Nobody seems to think Pierre Poilievre's job as leader is in jeopardy, but Conservatives are paying $1,000, plus hotels, airfares, and bar tabs to be here. So if it's not the leadership, what are the issues here for Conservatives?
Well, I wouldn't agree that it's not just leadership, because the leadership vote is going to be probably the highlight of the weekend. It's going to be happening on the first evening of the convention, and it's probably going to be the thing that, at least that the media hones in on. I haven't heard too many people paying too much attention to what the resolutions are for policy or party bylaw changes. Everybody's really focused on the leadership, but like in every convention, there's a lot of housekeeping that gets done too. They usually refresh the Constitution, they tweak some bylaws, and they pass policy recommendations from all over the country. But I think the focus that we're going to see is going to be a message of unity. Conservatives, as you note, are coming together from across the whole country. And since Mr. Poilievre became leader, the conservative movement has grown, it's strengthened, and the coalition has expanded. Witness the results of the last election.
Actually, can you remind us of those, Yaroslav?
Yeah, sure. In the last election, Mr. Poilievre, the Conservative Party under his leadership, received 41.5% of the popular vote. As you noted, Nigel, I used to advise Mr. Harper. He would have given his kidney for that kind of a result, the kind of vote percentage that Mr. Poilievre got in the last election. All parties dream about getting 41.5%, because it translates not only into victory, but into a strong majority government under normal circumstances. So the real story of the last election was the implosion of the NDP, period. That's what rewired the game and meant that even with 41.5%, huge voter support, the Conservatives did not form government. And I will eat my shirt, I will eat my sweater if that phenomenon repeats itself next time. I think the NDP is going to rebound in reaction to what they're seeing from the Carney government. We're not going to see the left coalesce around Mr. Carney again. And that means that if Mr. Poilievre continues to lead with principle, to demonstrate strong leadership, if he maintains the support that he got last time into the next election, he will be the next Prime Minister of Canada.
That's a very interesting analysis. Why would the NDP not cluster around Mr. Carney if their failure to do so would put Mr. Poilievre in office again? That sounds unlikely. Can you flesh that out a bit?
Yeah, the NDP and NDP voters are no strangers to strategic voting, but in the next election, they're going to see genuine opportunity. So it's not going to be just a question of, we're going to be the kingmakers, we're going to be hopefully a strong third party or anything like that. They're going to see a genuine opportunity to grow because they see Mr. Carney having repositioned the Liberals to the center, some would argue to the center right, and the left feels betrayed. Public service jobs are being cut by the thousands. Progressives, capital P, so-called progressives, feel homeless. And when the NDP elect a new leader in March, I am convinced that we're going to see a normalization of Canadian politics and a pretty strong resurgence for the NDP as the voice of the left.
Just coming back to the Conservatives, we already agreed between ourselves that they were coming from all corners of the country. Are any of them coming with malice in their hearts? You know what it's like trying to keep Conservatives together?
Well, yeah, like any strong, successful party with a track record of success also has a degree of impatience. Conservatives will not wait around forever if they feel that their dog can't hunt Same is true for the Liberals. But the evidence is that Mr. Poilievre can hunt. Again, look at the results of the last election. Look at how he continues to lead. He's a trailblazer in terms of putting issues on the agenda that genuinely connects with voters, or that mirror the true preoccupations of voters. He was talking about things like the cost of living well before it was on anybody else's radar. In fact, the establishment in Ottawa was kind of laughing at him, thinking, what planet is this guy on, talking about inflation? Like, whatever. Fast forward a year, everybody's talking about inflation. Everybody's talking about the cost of living. Time and time again, he's demonstrated, on crime, on fixing the immigration system, on national security. He tends to be a trailblazer. He's got his finger on the pulse.
So what does he have to score to win? Was 80% support sufficient?
I'm not sure that there's a particular number. There's no magical number on the books in terms of the party constitution or anything like that. So there's no number he quote unquote needs to get, although I know many in the media are going to hone in on that point. But it's an arbitrary and academic point at best. I'm not going to guess whether he gets 75 or 80 or 85 or whatever. But the real question, I think, will be the mood. What's the mood in the room? Will there be a strong showing of support? And I think there will be. Look, there's nobody else agitating in the wings. There's no alternative leader trying to build support. And that in and of itself is a reflection of party unity.
Good. Mr. Carney's speech to the World Economic Forum laid out an uninspiring vision of how the world's also-rans could compete for third place in the emerging multipolar world that he foresees. Mm-hmm. How would you advise Mr. Poilievre to respond to that speech?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure Mr. Poilievre would have gone to the World Economic Forum, so he certainly wouldn't be responding or giving an alternative speech there in person. It's not exactly on brand for him. But, hey, given the global context and given the fact that Mr. Trump attended and everybody wants to bend his ear, maybe he would have gone. I don't know. But I'm not sure there is much to say in response. Mr. Carney laid out really, the world as it really is. I think that was the point of the speech. And, he made a number of true points that we need to move away from our naivete of the past and accept, the real power dynamics in the world. Might actually is right, whether or not we like that. And whining about it doesn't do a thing to help Canada. He also made the point that we need to keep diversifying and investing in security in order to put actions behind words like sovereignty. And, I actually quite liked his point that many countries are being performative when they talk about sovereignty while actually capitulating to pressure from Washington, even though he didn't actually mention Washington by name. But that's why the Conservatives have always said that we need to get serious about national defense. The Conservatives have always said that we need to be serious about security, about maintaining confidence in our immigration system by not being irresponsible in the way we structure and run it, by partnering with allies and like-minded countries, not just the biggest international clubs that we can find. So I agree with you. The speech wasn't inspiring. It was sobering, if anything, but that doesn't mean its contents weren't true. It seemed like he was playing catch up to a lot of the stuff that Conservatives have been saying for years.
Well, he certainly was. Although I don't think we've ever put it quite the way he did. Perhaps for that particular audience, the bureaucraties of variable geometry, plurilateralism, the gains from transactionalism, the architecture of collective problem solving. What's a hyperscaler?
Yeah, I don't know what a hyperscaler is, and I'm not sure that I would have written a speech for a prime minister that starts by quoting Thucydides. But that's Mr. Carney's style. That's the company he travels in, and maybe for the Davos set that plays. I personally prefer to see leaders make speeches that their true audiences, their own voters, can relate to, and that they can resonate with people. If people are worried about paying their mortgages, if people are worried about the price of bread, my advice, and look, Nigel, you've been a professional speechwriter, and I might add one of the best I've ever seen. I'm sure that you also wouldn't have stylistically employed the same kind of rhetoric and the same kind of focus that we saw in Mr. Carney's speech, but focused much more on practical issues that Canadians are preoccupied with.
Well, certainly my wife would have mocked me if I had, if I give it to her and say, I'm going to put this up to the boss. What do you think? She would have probably told me to change the language a bit. While you were speaking, I looked up what a hyperscaler is, by the way. And that's a reference to the big tech companies, the AI people, the NVIDIAs of the world and so forth. I don't understand how they put the word together, but that's what it is anyway. So between the hegemons in China and the US, they've all got a piece of us.
Yeah, if Mr. Carney goes into the next election with with that kind of lexicon in his thumb speeches, and he's probably going to have some problems. And your wife would be absolutely correct in mocking you if you composed a speech. Right. Yeah, exactly. Honey, should I open it up with Thucydides' quote or maybe Herodotus? What do you think? No.
I will say this, as an exercise in speech writing, and we're getting a long way from the conservatives here, but he did follow the classic Aristotelian framework for his speech. He introduced his subject, he presented his evidence, he made the argument, and then he finished fairly strong. So as an exercise in speech writing, it's good, but the technical proficiency of it and the vocabulary that he used really identifies who Mr. Carney is. And he ain't one of us. So I would want to ask you, do you think that in fact he is a closet conservative? He's taken lots of Mr. Poilievre's ideas and run with them and done very well with them. And you think that's where his comfort level is?
Look, you know what? I think there's a fair argument to be made that he is a closet, variety of conservative, maybe sort of a closet classical Tory, if you will, sort of comfortable on Bay Street, comfortable, presenting, quarterly earnings reports, that sort of thing. And that's reflected in his verbiage in his speech. It's the kind of language that was probably fairly familiar to the actual people in the room, the billionaire, corporate set who was in the room listening to a speech at Davos. I think that conservatism has evolved quite a bit in Canada. It's always been a coalition of different groups. And I would also posit that that's likely why Mr. Poilievre has been successful as a conservative leader. He doesn't belong squarely to any one of the factions or groups within the conservative tent. He's sort of a cross-pollinated kind of function of all of them. He's comfortable speaking with social conservatives. He's comfortable speaking with democratic reformers. He's comfortable speaking with sort of a populist, resonant, what's on the mind of your barber or your cab driver or your small business owner. And that's certainly Mr. Poilievre's recipe for success. I would say that he is a bit more of a pan-conservative than, whatever variety Mr. Carney might be, which might be sort of a downtown Toronto Bay Street type.
Yes. Well, let's say, for the sake of argument, that Mr. Carney is sort of something of a conservative. Then how is that going to affect his relationship with the NDP?
That's precisely why I think the NDP is set for a strong rebound in the coming months or years, if it is that long. Because many people in the Liberal Party itself are quietly grumbling that they don't recognize their party anymore, that their leadership has deviated far more towards an economic and business preoccupation that they're comfortable with. They feel that social justice and environment are being sacrificed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if liberals are muttering that way, then certainly New Democrats feel that they no longer can morally justify parking their conscience and casting their vote for the Liberals. I think that Mr. Carney's repositioning of his party is ultimately going to be his own downfall. He's trying to appeal to a broad swath of conservative and liberal vote switchers, but I'm not sure that that's going to hold in the end. You've got the real deal conservatives on one end and a revamped left that can actually be true to itself on the other end. And Mr. Carney might end up squeezing himself out of a political home.
Well, that does bear very much on the possibility of an election this year. There's a lot of speculation that Mr. Carney, in order to get a majority that he feels he needs to advance his agenda, will bring about the circumstances. But is that actually going to work? He got elected on the basis of the NDP coming to his support. If he alienates the NDP, then it's back to him against the Conservatives, and he running on a Conservative platform. Can you put that together for us? What should we be watching for in the during the convention?
Well, it's not just the convention. I think it's the next few months that are going to be really, really telling. Mr. Carney spent the end of 2025 aggressively trying to get a majority by stealth, trying to get floor crossers, and you got two. I don't think that there are more waiting in the wings. This is not the kind of thing that you can strategically stage. Or we're going to announce so-and-so in, mid-February or anything like that. It's too risky. It's too slippery. So when you've got a live fish on your, on the end of your pole, you reel it in right away. So I don't think that there's anybody else crossing the floor that's going to give him that majority. And I think all the signs are that he desperately wants one. He doesn't seem to be that capable of governing, at least in Parliament, without a majority. His legislative progress has been really, really weak, weaker than I've ever seen for any government. And he's going to try hard to get a majority. If he can't get it through floor crossings, I think he'll be strongly, strongly tempted to call an early election. And given that the North American Free Trade Agreement renegotiation or refresh exercise is going to be starting this summer, it's going to give him all the pretext he needs. You're an old watcher of politics, Nigel. You know that typically a prime minister announces a reason, and as long as it's a reasonably plausible excuse, then you get away with it. So I could absolutely see him saying, we're going into the negotiation of our lifetime with the CUSMA reevaluation, and I need a refreshed mandate specifically for this. I need a stronger hand. So I'm going to go to the polls. I would not be surprised at all to see that happen for, say, maybe a June election or June-July election kind of thing.
Oh, you think that late? I was when I was thinking about it, I was looking at the NDP. I think their leadership vote is at the end of March. They need to have somebody in place by then. Why would you wait any longer?
Well, the closer you get to summer, the closer you get to the beginning of the CUSMA, the free trade agreement renegotiation, the more credible your pretext is. So people aren't really going to be thinking about it necessarily in April. They certainly will be in June, but the timing is going to be variable, and he's going to be watching the polls. And right now he's doing well in the polls. The Liberals and the Conservatives are basically neck and neck, depending on which poll you look at. And he's not. I can see him not quite realizing in time that the NDP is going to be a threat. But once the election campaign gets underway, people start to pay attention. They start to match their own values and their own conscience to an electoral option. And the NDP is going to rebound. The Conservatives are going to hold strong. And it's going to be really competitive.
So what do you think is possible for him to do in the next 5 months, during which he's got to occupy, he's got to make headlines, he's got to be there and occupy the space? What could he actually achieve? There's a number of controversial bills out there. C9, for example, there's a lot of people talking about that. C2 as well, which
the border security bill. Yeah.
Where's his priority going to be?
Honestly, I think his priority is going to be on foreign policy. I think we're going to see a lot of foreign travel, a lot of foreign visits, a lot of foreign speeches, a lot of announcements about new free trade negotiations with this country or that country. We saw Indonesia, for example, in the fall. We got some negotiations underway with India and so on. He is strong in that kind of an environment. It plays to his strength, but actually getting stuff done in Parliament, that's probably his weakest suit, because he doesn't seem to be capable of managing Parliament well. So I don't think that we're going to see a lot happen in Parliament. I think it's going to be largely a continuation of what we saw last year. I mean, last year, between Parliament opening up and summer, they passed one bill. I mean, pulling aside supply bills, the kind of stuff that finances, keeps the lights on, keeps people paid. They out of like substance bills, they passed one bill in the spring and one bill in the fall. I've never seen that, that weak a legislative record. Like it's almost stupefying.
Maybe he should call a meeting of European heads of state in somewhere in Greenland.
That's the kind of thing I think we will see from him, because it's the kind of thing he doesn't need a competent parliamentary management to do. You can announce meetings or announce the tours and give speeches and get global audiences. So he's probably going to play to his strength. We're going to hear a lot about foreign policy and trade policy, and very little, I think, getting done in Parliament.
To be honest, Yaroslav, if I expected anybody to show up in Greenland and make a speech, it wouldn't be Mr. Carney, it would be Mr. Trump. But we'll see how that whole thing develops. We are out of time, and did you want to comment on that before we say farewell?
Well, Greenland is quickly eclipsing everything else as the issue. It's certainly eclipsing the Canada-U.S. trade negotiations or trade relationship. Globally, it's becoming the number one issue. Unfortunately, I think it's taking the spotlight away from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Greenland is the central focus. We're probably going to hear a whole heck of a lot more about it in the coming months.
It's the darndest thing that speech, whether it was a good speech or a poorly written one, was all about the United States walking away from the so-called rules-based order. Yeah. There was no mention of the fact that Russia and China walked away from it about 30 years ago. So I do find that when we're talking about that speech that he made in Davos, the logical inconsistency there. Yaroslav, I think you're coming to town for the convention. We hope we see you there. And thank you for taking the time to talk with me this evening.
Always a pleasure, Nigel, and I look forward to seeing you in Calgary.
Thank you so much. For the Western Standard, I'm Nigel Hannaford.